Hello all. It's good to be alive. Um, what's going on for me at present is I've been up for about 40 minutes, had time for a can of Coke and a cigarette, time enough to say a quick prayer, and ask for help. And yeah, um, I guess in my last video I spoke about deaffectualization. I didn't explain that very clearly. Because as I mentioned, there's not a great deal of information. And the more I think about it now, the more I realise that it's pretty simple. Affect being mood, um, and that, you lack of mood or for me, I guess I try to control my mood, and I do so through indulging in caffeine and sugar and nicotine as well. That's a self-soothing uh, uh, effect or affect. When I am elated, you I have a tendency to want to self-glorify in the sense that, I become so enamored with myself that I believe that I am immortal, so to speak, and invulnerable. I get in touch with that inner divinity, and, I have a tendency to want to exalt in it. It's absolutely fabulous. And, I guess I marvel at life and existence, um, when in reality it's delusional in nature, because generally most people that experience that kind of affect, have either won a huge tournament for the first time, or they've participated in a team game, in a competition, and have come out victors. So it's taken me a long time to realise, that that's the kind of affect that I wanted to, that I overgeneralized, in the sense that, I wanted to experience that on a permanent basis. I thought it was love, and it's it's just basically delusion, like I mentioned. Um, I wanted to internalize it forever and a day, and it's that's what most people experience, um, when they think of their creator and how magnificent, um, his love, and how grateful they are to be a benefactor of that love. Whereas mine was all self-produced, and I never really learned to make a connection with that kind of affect and a divine being. For me, I thought it was self-produced, and it was. It's narcissistic. Um, there's a term called narcissistic elation, and it states that most adult human beings seek to return to this infantile state of mind, um, through mystical ecstasy, passionate love, and music. And for me, it was through music. For years, I attended my appointments uh, with my psychiatrist after indulging in Coca-Cola and smoking copious amounts of cigarettes. And I'd walk to my appointments, that sometimes were an hour or more away, with my headphones in, listening to music, and just entering into this place, that was exquisite in nature, and by the time my appointment came around, I felt as if I was already connected to the divine, so to speak. Not that I was aware of it at the time. It's only in hindsight that I can see that now. But, it was marvelous in nature. And I guess when I experience that, I am vulnerable to auditory hallucinations. It's just inside my head. This is where I get confused. Auditory hallucinations, voices outside my head. I don't get that. It's all in my head. Sometimes I think I'm telepathic, um, but I do get feedback in my head, from uh, what from individuals whom I then try and uh, you know work out their profile, or I have done in the past, and yeah, that's what triggers the delusion. I'm not sure which comes first, the delusion, then the voices, or the voices and then the delusion. But, it just manifests, and that's when I can start to experience uh, grandiosity, and I can start to tell myself that I'm a genius of sort. The voices in my head try to infer that I'm a genius of sorts. I know in reality that's not real, or otherwise I would have had this all figured out by now. And it's just surrendering to the fact that I do have impaired thinking and thought disorders. That I've been able to work on my low self-esteem and find value within myself as I am. I mentioned in my last post about the fluctuation between my ideal self, which is celebrated and applauded, and the the um, real self, which is introverted, and whom I have judged, the self-judgment, as weak, pathetic, useless, no good, scumbag, um, uh, burden, and things along those lines. So finding that middle ground is what I endeavour to do on each day, and I guess I'll make these videos, and yeah, anything that didn't measure up to that surreal state of mind, where I felt divine, I judged as being tedious, monotonous, boring, and unfulfilling. Whereas today I can experience those kinds of feelings and not get overwhelmed by them. I still find them a little confusing, because of the flat effect that I experience in de-effectualization. But it's getting a whole lot better, you know. So that's something that I figured out the other day, is that, I self-aggrandize, when I detach, I build myself up, I become grandiose, and, then I start to entertain delusions of reference or grandeur, and, it can build to the point where I become megalomaniacal, and I think that I can sweep the world uh, and rid it of all its ills and suffering, and or otherwise, you know, um, yeah, rid the world of all its ills and sufferings, and bring them into the light, so to speak. And I'm not a religious person, but I do have these uh, uh, characteristics to my mental and cognitive, they're the same thing, to my cognitive makeup, and it's a perceptual thing. The only religious experience I've had was as a teenager when my mother remarried a religious man, and they used to try and drag me to church. At the end of my active addiction, I used to reflect on that time in my life, trying to seek salvation, and um, I guess it still had a profound effect on my psyche. So I don't really know what else to say. I've been going on for about 12 minutes now, and I don't think I've made a great deal of sense once again. No one comments except for Dave. Dave, big shout out to Dave. How you going, Dave? And yeah, so and Jules comments as well. So I don't really know what else to say. It's good to be here. It's good to be alive. Might make another video later on in the day. De-effectualization is basically just uh, uh, the process of having extreme mood swings and being able to control them, I guess. I guess I'm fearful of the highs and lows that I experience, and once again trying to find that middle ground without slipping into detached neutralism where I'm neither here nor there. But yet again, that may be, my process. And what I am comparing it with again is normalcy, which is delusion in itself. So, I definitely need to see a counselor again, to sort through this mess. But, yeah, feedback, guys. Feedback. Thanks. Subscribe, comment, and I'll get back to you. Have a good day.